I was standing in heels I could barely afford, holding a champagne glass I didn't want, under a chandelier that probably cost more than my college education, when Logan Whitmore, the man I had loved for 2 years, turned to me, in front of his mother, his board members, and half of Boston's elite, and laughed. "Ava doesn't really live here," he chuckled. "She stays in my apartment, kind of like a long-term guest, living off me mostly. But don't worry, she won't be there much longer." The room erupted in awkward laughter. Some people looked away. Others smiled politely. I just stood there, frozen, humiliated. But what no one expected, including Logan, was that the very next morning, while I was still reeling from the shame of that night, he would show up at my door, desperate, panicked, begging, and everything would change. I met Logan Whitmore on a Tuesday afternoon in September, the kind of perfect Boston fall day that makes you believe in new beginnings. I was rushing through the public garden, balancing my laptop bag and a tray of coffee I was delivering to my marketing team. We were pitching a new client, a small but growing organic food company, and I was determined to make a good impression. That's when I collided with him. "I'm so sorry," I said, mortified as I watched coffee splatter across his clearly expensive cashmere coat. "I wasn't looking where—" "Neither was I," he said. And when I finally looked up, I saw the most disarming smile I'd ever encountered. Logan Whitmore was tall, with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to wonder if you belong somewhere. His eyes were the color of expensive whiskey, and they crinkled at the corners when he smiled. I was too busy answering emails while walking. Terrible habit. Instead of being angry, he insisted on buying me replacement coffees. While we waited in line, he asked about my work with an interest that seemed genuine. I told him about my small marketing consultancy, how I'd moved to Boston, after putting my younger sister Tessa through college back home in Ohio, how I loved helping small businesses find their voice. "You have a remarkable way of explaining things, Ava," he said, remembering my name after hearing it only once. "My company could use someone like you." 3 days later, I was sitting in the glass-walled conference room of Whitmore Ventures, pitching my services to Logan and his executive team. 2 weeks after that, I was hired as a communications consultant for his foundation. I couldn't believe my luck. Logan Whitmore wasn't just wealthy, he was Boston royalty. The Whitmore name graced half the buildings in Back Bay, and their family foundation funded everything from hospital wings to arts programs. Yet somehow, Logan seemed different from what I expected. He listened when I spoke. He valued my opinions on his public speaking engagements. He laughed at my jokes. When he asked me to dinner the first time, I hesitated. "I don't date clients," I told him. "Then I'll find someone else to handle the foundation's communications," he said, not missing a beat. "You're irreplaceable, Ava. The foundation isn't." That was the thing about Logan. He always knew exactly what to say. By our 3rd date, I was falling for him. By our 10th, I was in love. My one-bedroom apartment in Somerville suddenly became the place Logan Whitmore spent weekends, much to the shock of my neighbors. My simple life, work, calls with Tessa, occasional drinks with my best friend Jordan, expanded to include charity galas, weekend trips to the Cape, and dinners at restaurants, where the menu had no prices. "Move in with me," Logan said one night, 6 months into our relationship. We were on his balcony at Beacon Terrace Residences, watching the sunset paint the Charles River gold. "This place is too big for just me, and you're here all the time anyway." I hesitated. "I can't afford to split the rent on a place like this, Logan." He laughed and pulled me closer. "That's not how this works. This is my place. I want you here because I love you. It's what people in love do." So I gave up my apartment and moved my few possessions into Logan's sleek, minimalist penthouse. At first, it felt like playing house in someone else's life. I'd wake up to floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the Boston skyline, padding around a kitchen with marble countertops and appliances I was afraid to use. But gradually, I started making it mine too. Fresh flowers in the living room, my books on the shelves, my favorite mugs in the cabinet. For almost a year, I lived in what felt like a dream. I helped Logan prepare for his speaking engagements, supported him during rough patches with investors, and even managed parts of his foundation's social media for free. I believed we were building something together. Then, the cracks started showing. It began with small things. Logan's mother, Patricia Whitmore, a woman who wore her family's 200-year legacy like armor, would visit and ask me to be a dear and fetch some tea, as if I were staff. Logan never corrected her. At events, I noticed Logan had stopped introducing me as his girlfriend. I was just Ava, with no context. provided, leaving people to draw their own conclusions. When I brought it up, he dismissed my concerns. "You're being sensitive," he'd say. "Everyone knows who you are." But did they? I began to wonder if they just saw me as Logan's latest accessory, or worse, his charity case. Then came the jokes. Small, seemingly harmless comments about me not paying rent or being lucky to live in such luxury. Each one stung more than the last, but I told myself I was overreacting. After all, relationships weren't supposed to be transactional, were they? I loved Logan. I supported his work. I was there for him. Wasn't that enough? I threw myself into proving my worth. I worked harder on his foundation projects, offering marketing strategies that helped increase donations by 30%. I hosted dinner parties for his investors, impressing them with my knowledge of their portfolios. I became the perfect partner, hoping that eventually he would see me as an equal. But the more I gave, the less respect I seemed to earn. The comments became more frequent, the dismissals more obvious. One night, after I'd spent hours helping him prepare for a crucial investor meeting, he patted my head like I was a pet and said, "What would I do without my little cheerleader?" I should have seen it then. The patronizing tone, the subtle diminishment. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? It makes you deaf to warning bells and dumb to your own intuition. And so I stayed, convincing myself that things would change, that Logan would eventually recognize my value beyond what I could do for him, that the man I fell in love with in the public garden was still there beneath the entitled veneer that seemed to grow thicker with each passing month. I had no idea that everything would come crashing down on a single night, under the glittering chandeliers of the Beacon Hill Social Club, where Boston's elite gathered to celebrate the very foundation I had helped build. The Beacon Hill Social Club was a temple to old money, with its dark wood paneling, oil paintings of stern-faced founding members, and crystal chandeliers that had witnessed a century of elite gatherings. I'd spent weeks helping plan the foundation gala, making sure every detail was perfect for the donors and board members who would be in attendance. That morning, Logan's assistant had delivered a designer dress to our apartment, a midnight blue gown with a modest neckline and an open back. The note attached simply read, "For tonight. L. Not, I can't wait to see you in this," or "You'll look beautiful." Just for tonight, as if I were another item on his checklist. Still, I felt a flutter of hope. Maybe this event would be different. Maybe tonight, Logan would finally acknowledge me properly again, introduce me as his partner, the woman who had helped shape his foundation's messaging and outreach programs. I arrived early, as I always did for Logan's events, to make sure everything was in place. The venue glowed with soft lighting, tables adorned with centerpieces I had personally selected, white roses and blue hydrangeas, elegant without being ostentatious. The seating chart I'd arranged placed potential major donors at strategic tables. Even the menu had my touch, featuring locally sourced ingredients from the very farms the foundation supported. When Logan arrived, he seemed distant, preoccupied. I approached him as he spoke with a group of board members, touching his arm gently. "Everything looks perfect," I said, offering a reassuring smile. "The Hendersons just arrived, and they're impressed with the Sustainable Seafood Initiative." He barely glanced at me. "Good. Could you make sure my mother has a drink? She just texted that she's in the lobby." I swallowed my disappointment and did as he asked, greeting Patricia Whitmore with a warmth she never returned. "Ava," she said, her eyes sweeping over my dress with cool assessment. "Blue isn't really your color, is it? But I suppose it will do." I handed her a glass of her preferred Chardonnay and smiled through the sting. "The event is going wonderfully. Logan's speech is set for 8 o'clock. "Yes, well, let's hope he doesn't stumble over the major donor names this time," she replied. "Perhaps you could remind him to mention the Richardsons. They're considering a 7-figure donation." I nodded, already making a mental note to whisper this to Logan before he took the stage. This was my role, after all, the invisible support system, the one who anticipated needs before they were spoken, who smoothed rough edges and filled in gaps. The dinner portion of the evening began, and I found myself seated at a table far from Logan. Instead, I was placed with minor donors and a few staff members, a clear message about where I ranked in the hierarchy of the room. I watched as Logan charmed his table, his mother at his right hand, the foundation's most generous supporters surrounding them. His speech was flawless. I had helped him practice it for weeks, honing the message, adding personal touches that would resonate with the audience. As he thanked his team, his board, even the catering staff, I waited for my name. It never came. After the applause died down and the dessert course was served, Logan made his way around the room, stopping at each table to personally thank the attendees. When he reached mine, he had that familiar gleam in his eye, the one that appeared after a few glasses of wine and several ego-boosting conversations. "And here's my table of unsung heroes," he said, his hand resting on my shoulder a little too heavily. "You know, without these folks, none of this would be possible." An older gentleman at our table, a retired professor whose modest donations came from genuine belief in the cause, smiled kindly at me. "You must be very proud of what the foundation has accomplished, my dear. Logan speaks so highly of your contributions." Before I could respond, Logan laughed. That sharp, dismissive sound I had come to dread. "Oh, Ava doesn't really work for the foundation anymore," he said, swirling his wine. "She just helps out occasionally. Mostly she stays in my apartment, kind of like a long-term guest." My cheeks burned as I felt every eye at the table turn to me. "Living off me mostly," Logan continued, as if he were sharing a charming anecdote. "But don't worry, she won't be there much longer." The table erupted in awkward laughter. Some people looked away, others smiled politely. The retired professor's kind expression shifted to pity. I just sat there, frozen, humiliated. "Logan," I managed to say, my voice barely audible over the clinking of glasses and murmur of conversation. "That's not—" "Oh, come on, Ava. Everyone knows the arrangement," he said, winking at a woman across the table. "She doesn't pay rent, but she's got the best views in Boston." More laughter, more uncomfortable glances. I felt as though I were shrinking, becoming smaller and smaller until I might disappear completely beneath the crisp white tablecloth. I excused myself and walked, slowly, deliberately, determined not to run, to the restroom. Once inside a stall, I pressed my forehead against the cool marble wall and tried to breathe. This wasn't just a careless comment or a thoughtless joke. This was Logan telling me, and everyone else, exactly what he thought of me. What I was to him. I didn't matter. I never had. When I emerged, Logan was back at his table, deep in conversation with his mother and a major donor. He didn't look for me. He didn't check if I was okay. In that moment, I knew with absolute clarity that I had to leave. Not just the gala, but his life. I slipped out before dessert was served, not bothering to say goodbye. Outside, the October air was crisp, carrying the promise of the first frost. I didn't call a car service. Instead, I walked, my designer heels clicking on the cobblestone streets of Beacon Hill, my bare arms prickling with cold under the open back of the gown Logan had selected for me to wear. By the time I reached our building, no, his building, my feet were blistered and my makeup was streaked with tears I hadn't realized I was shedding. The doorman gave me a concerned look, but said nothing as I made my way to the elevator. When the doors opened to the penthouse, I stepped into darkness. And then I saw them. Boxes. My belongings. Packed up and stacked neatly in the entryway. My books, my clothes, even my toothbrush, all removed from their places in what I had foolishly thought of as our home. No note, no explanation, no closure. Logan had planned this. While I was helping organize his gala, making sure his speech was perfect, thinking of ways to impress his mother, he had been preparing to remove me from his life. I sank to the floor beside my boxed-up existence, my beautiful dress pooling around me like spilled ink. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Boston glittered beneath a moonless sky, indifferent to my small tragedy unfolding in its midst. I should have cried. I should have screamed. Instead, I felt a strange calm wash over me, the kind that comes when you finally see the truth that's been in front of you, all along. I pulled out my phone and texted the only person I knew would come. No questions asked. "Jordan," I wrote, "I need a place to stay tonight." Then I changed out of Logan's chosen dress into jeans and a sweater, gathered what I could carry, and walked out of Logan Whitmore's life. Or so I thought. I had no idea that the very next morning, everything would change again. The rain started as I left the building, a soft drizzle that quickly turned into a steady downpour. Fitting, I thought, as I trudged through the wet streets with my overnight bag and a small box of essentials. My phone buzzed with Jordan's response. "Doors open. Wine's ready." Jordan lived in a fourth-floor walk-up in the South End, a cozy two-bedroom with mismatched furniture and walls covered in framed concert posters. We'd been friends since college, when we were both scholarship kids surrounded by trust funds and family connections. Jordan had seen me through every up and down of my adult life, including my relationship with Logan. Holy shit! they said, opening the door. One look at my face told them everything. He finally showed his true colors, didn't he? I collapsed onto their worn couch, soaking wet and emotionally drained. He humiliated me, Jordan, in front of everyone. Then I got home and found my things packed up. Jordan handed me a glass of red wine and sat beside me. Tell me everything. So I did. The cutting remarks, the public humiliation, the boxes in the hallway. With each word, the reality of what had happened sank deeper into my bones. 2 years of my life, gone. A future I had imagined, erased. I feel so stupid, I whispered, staring into my wine glass. I gave up my apartment, my independence, parts of my business to help him. And the whole time he saw me as, what? A charity case? A temporary amusement? You're not stupid, Jordan said firmly. You're someone who believed in love and partnership. He's the one who couldn't see your worth. I took a long sip of wine. You warned me, though. You said the power imbalance was too great. Jordan shrugged. Being right about this doesn't make me happy, Ava. And anyway, you're better off without someone who could treat you like that. We stayed up late, talking through every painful detail. Jordan offered me their spare room for as long as you need, and we made a rough plan. I would focus on rebuilding my consulting business, which had suffered while I was devoting so much time to Logan's foundation. I would look for my own place. Something small, but mine. I would reclaim my independence. Sleep came fitfully, in broken fragments filled with dreams of falling. I woke early, disoriented in the unfamiliar room, before the events of the previous night came flooding back. My phone showed. No messages from Logan. Not that I expected any. He'd made his position perfectly clear. I was nursing my first cup of coffee, sitting cross-legged on Jordan's windowsill and watching the city shake off the rain, when the first text arrived. Not from Logan, but from Max, the IT specialist who had worked with me on the Foundation's website. Hey, Ava, is everything okay with the Foundation's server? Logan's been calling me since 6 a.m., but I'm out of town. Something about a security breach? Before I could process this, another text came through. This one from Eliza, Logan's assistant. Mr. Whitmore needs to reach you urgently. Please call the office ASAP. I showed the messages to Jordan, who had just stumbled out of their bedroom, hair standing in all directions. Don't you dare respond, they said, pouring coffee with more force than necessary. He made his bed. Let him lie in it. I was inclined to agree. Whatever crisis Logan was facing had nothing to do with me anymore. I set my phone aside and tried to focus on planning my day, calling clients, arranging to pick up the rest of my belongings, maybe looking at apartment listings. Then came the knocking. Forceful, urgent knocking. That seemed to shake Jordan's entire apartment. Jordan peered through the peephole and turned to me, eyes wide. It's him, Logan. My heart leapt into my throat. I don't want to see him. I'll get rid of him, Jordan promised, unlocking the door but keeping the chain on. What do you want? Logan's voice carried through the crack in the door, strained and ragged. I need to talk to Ava, please. It's an emergency. You lost the right to her time last night, Jordan replied coolly. Go away before I call security. Please, Logan's voice cracked. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't absolutely necessary. The Foundation's server was hacked. Everything's been compromised. Donor information, financial records, everything. I moved to the door, still keeping out of sight. What does that have to do with me, Logan? You're the only one who knows how the accounts were set up, he said, desperation clear in his voice. Max is unreachable, and the security protocols. You helped design them, Ava. Please, I need your help. I exchanged glances with Jordan, who rolled their eyes and mouthed, Don't fall for it. But something in Logan's voice gave me pause. This wasn't the smooth, confident man who had laughed at me in front of Boston's elite. This was someone on the edge. 5 minutes, I said finally. You have 5 minutes to explain. Jordan reluctantly removed the chain, and Logan practically fell into the apartment. His appearance shocked me. His normally impeccable hair was disheveled, his expensive shirt wrinkled and untucked, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept at all. Thank you, he breathed, his eyes finding mine. Ava, 4 minutes and 50 seconds, I said coldly. What happened to the server? He ran a hand through his hair. Someone breached the firewall last night. They've accessed everything. Donor databases, financial records, even my personal emails. They're threatening to release it all unless, he swallowed hard, unless I pay them $5 million. I almost laughed. And this concerns me how, exactly? The security system, he said. You set it up with Max. You're the only one who knows all the backdoor access points. Max is in Singapore and unreachable, and the IT team can't figure out how the breach happened or how to contain it. I remembered the system well. Months ago, I had urged Logan to implement stronger security measures for the Foundation's digital assets. I'd worked alongside Max to create a robust protocol, complete with encryption for sensitive donor information. Logan had complained about the cost and hassle, but eventually relented. I warned you, I said quietly. I told you to encrypt your personal server, too. You said it was excessive and paranoid. Logan's face fell. I know. You were right. I should have listened. The admission surprised me. Logan Whitmore rarely admitted he was wrong about anything. That still doesn't explain why you're here, I said. Call a cybersecurity firm. You can afford it. They're already working on it, he said, but they need information only you have. The original security architecture, the backdoor protocols. I documented everything. Interrupted. It's all in the red binder in your office cabinet. Logan shook his head. It's not there. I looked everywhere. I sighed, remembering. I took it home to update it last month. It's in... I trailed off as the realization hit me. It's in one of the boxes you packed up. A flicker of hope crossed Logan's face. So you have it? No, I said flatly. I only grabbed what I could carry. Last night. The rest is still in your hallway. About that, Logan said, his voice dropping. There's something else you should know. The apartment, there's been a complication. Jordan, who had been silently watching our exchange with arms crossed, let out a sharp laugh. A complication? What, did you change the locks already? Logan didn't look at Jordan. His eyes remained fixed on me, troubled and uncertain. The apartment isn't in my name anymore, Ava. It's in yours. The words made no sense. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline to what had to be a cruel joke. What are you talking about? I finally managed. Logan sank onto Jordan's couch without being invited. 6 months ago, my financial advisor suggested putting some of my properties under different names for tax purposes. It was supposed to be temporary, just a paper transfer. I listed you as the owner of the Beacon Terrace penthouse. I shook my head, disbelieving. That's not possible. I would have had to sign something. Remember that stack of documents I asked you to sign for the Foundation's charity registration? Logan asked. The apartment transfer was mixed in with them. Jordan let out a low whistle. You sneaky bastard. It wasn't like that, Logan protested. It was supposed to be a formality. My lawyer assured me we could transfer it back whenever needed. So transfer it back, I said, struggling to process this information. That's the problem, Logan said, rubbing his temples. The transfer documents were on my personal server, the one that was hacked. If those get out with the emails discussing the tax advantages. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Tax avoidance schemes, even legal ones, would look terrible for Logan and his foundation if made public. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. You publicly humiliated me, packed up my belongings, and planned to throw me out of your apartment, which is actually legally mine? Logan had the decency to look ashamed. I didn't mean what I said last night. I was drunk, showing off. It was unforgivable. You're right about that, I agreed. It was unforgivable. We sat in tense silence for a moment, the only sound the ticking of Jordan's vintage wall clock and the distant hum of morning traffic. I need your help, Ava, Logan finally said, his voice quiet. Not just with the server, but with everything. We can fix this together. Start over. Jordan made a disgusted noise. Are you kidding me right now? You think she's going to help you after what you did? But I was already thinking, calculating. Not about reconciliation. That bridge had burned to ash the moment Logan mocked me in front of his peers. No, I was thinking about something else entirely. Leverage. For the first time since, I'd met Logan Whitmore, the power dynamic had shifted. The penthouse apartment was legally mine. The security information he desperately needed was in my possession. The man who had dismissed me as someone living off him was now the one who needed me. I'll help you with the security breach, I said finally, my voice calm and measured. But not because I forgive you. Because innocent donors could be hurt if their information is leaked. Relief washed over Logan's face. Thank you. I promise, once this is resolved, we can talk about everything else. The apartment, us. There is no us, Logan, I interrupted. And as for the apartment, I met his eyes steadily. I think I'll keep it. The look on Logan's face was worth every moment of humiliation I'd endured. Shock, disbelief, and a dawning realization that for once he wasn't in control. "You can't be serious," he said. "I've never been more serious in my life," I replied, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. "The apartment is legally mine. You just confirmed it." Logan stood up, running his hands through his hair again, a nervous habit I'd rarely seen from him. "Ava, be reasonable. It was a temporary arrangement, a paper transfer. You know the apartment was never meant to belong to someone like me," I finished for him. "Someone who's just a long-term guest? Someone living off you?" Jordan stepped between us, their protective instinct kicking in. "I think you should leave now, Logan." "Not until we resolve this," he insisted. "Ava, I need those security protocols, and we need to discuss the apartment situation rationally." I considered my options. Part of me, the part that still stung from last night's humiliation, wanted to throw him out of Jordan's apartment and let him deal with his crisis alone. But another part, the practical consultant who had built a reputation for solving complex problems, knew that the Foundation's data breach affected more than just Logan. Innocent donors could have their information exposed. Staff members' jobs could be at risk. "I'll help with the security breach," I said again. "But we're doing this on my terms." I grabbed my coat and turned to Jordan. "I'll be back later. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing." Jordan didn't look convinced. "Are you sure about this?" I nodded. "For once, I'm very sure." Outside, the morning was bright and clear, the rain having washed away the previous night's clouds. Logan followed me silently as I hailed a cab. In the back seat, we sat as far apart as possible, the tension between us almost tangible. "Beacon Terrace," I told the driver, then turned to Logan. "I need to get the security binder." He nodded, his eyes fixed on the passing cityscape. "Ava, about last night. We're not discussing that right now." I cut him off. "I'm helping with the data breach. That's it." The rest of the ride passed in silence. When we arrived at the building, the doorman greeted me with a nod. "Good morning, Ms. Mitchell." Inside the elevator, Logan tried again. "We need to talk about the apartment, Ava. My lawyer says—" "Your lawyer can contact my lawyer," I interrupted, surprising even myself with the words. I didn't have a lawyer, not yet, but I would soon. The penthouse was exactly as I'd left it, my boxes still stacked neatly in the entryway. I went directly to the smallest one, labeled Office, and began searching through it. Logan hovered nearby, watching anxiously as I pulled out the red binder containing all the security protocols I'd developed with Max. "Got it," I said, holding it up. "Now, let's see what we're dealing with." I moved to the dining table and spread out the contents of the binder: network diagrams, access protocols, encryption keys. Logan sat across from me looking both relieved and wary. "The breach notification came at 3 a.m., he explained. A message on the Foundation's website, followed by an email with samples of the stolen data. I nodded, flipping through my notes. "The main vulnerability would be the connection between your personal server and the Foundation's network. I told you to keep them separate." "I know," Logan admitted. "There were documents I needed access to from both places. It seemed more convenient to link them." "Convenience costs," I murmured, finding the page I was looking for. "Here, these are the backdoor access points Max created for emergency system resets. They might help contain the breach." I pulled out my laptop, one of the few things I'd grabbed the night before, and connected to the Foundation's network using the administrator credentials I still had. Within minutes, I was deep in the system, tracing the breach and implementing containment protocols. Logan watched me work, his expression a mixture of admiration and unease. For 2 hours, I barely spoke, focused entirely on securing the vulnerable systems and tracing the source of the hack. Finally, I sat back. "I've isolated the breach and revoked the access they were using," I said. "The Foundation's donor database is secure now. I've also implemented additional encryption on the most sensitive files." Relief washed over Logan's face. "Thank you, truly." "Your personal server is still compromised," I continued, "but that's beyond my expertise. Your cybersecurity team will need to handle that part." Logan nodded, then hesitated. "About the apartment documents." "Already secured," I said. "I found them in your file directory and moved them to an encrypted folder. The hackers won't find them unless they already downloaded them, which doesn't seem to be the case based on what they've threatened to release." For a moment, Logan looked genuinely moved. "Even after everything, you're still protecting me." "I'm protecting innocent people," I corrected him. "Donors who trusted the Foundation with their information, staff who depend on their jobs. This isn't about you. I closed my laptop and stood up. My work here is done. I'll email the cybersecurity team the details of what I've implemented, but they should be able to take it from here. Logan rose as well, suddenly looking uncertain in the spacious penthouse that had been his domain for so long. And the apartment? I looked around at the place I'd called home for over a year, the floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the Boston skyline, the sleek, modern furniture, the kitchen where I'd tried to cook Logan breakfast on his birthday, setting off the smoke alarm and making us both laugh until tears came. This apartment represented everything about our relationship, beautiful on the surface, hollow underneath, a place where I had never truly belonged, always feeling like a visitor in someone else's life. I'm keeping it, I said, surprised by my own certainty. Not forever, just long enough to figure out my next steps. You can't just— Actually, I can, I interrupted, a new confidence in my voice. You put it in my name, Logan. That was your choice. Just like it was your choice to humiliate me last night and pack up my things without a word. I walked to the window, looking out at the city spread before me. Consider this apartment the severance package for 2 years of unpaid work for your foundation. For all the events I organized, the speeches I wrote, the connections I brought in. Logan's reflection in the glass showed his struggle. Anger, shame, calculation. Finally, he nodded. Temporarily, until we can sort this out properly. I turned to face him. You should go. Your cybersecurity team will be waiting. For an update. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Ava, I am sorry about last night. I was drunk, showing off. What I said, it wasn't how I really feel about you. That's the thing, Logan, I said quietly. I think it was. You just never meant to say it out loud. After he left, I stood in the center of the vast living room, listening to the silence. For the first time, this space felt truly mine. Not because I had earned Logan's love, but because I had reclaimed my own worth. I pulled out my phone and called Jordan. I'm staying at the apartment, I told them. At least for now. Are you sure that's a good idea? Jordan asked. I looked around at my boxed-up belongings, at the life Logan had so casually decided to discard. No, I admitted. But it's my decision to make, and right now that feels like exactly what I need. The first night alone in the penthouse was strange. I wandered from room to room, seeing the space through new eyes, not as Logan's girlfriend, grateful for his generosity, but as the legal owner, evaluating my property. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. I started with my boxes, still stacked neatly in the entryway. One by one, I unpacked them, putting my books back on shelves, my clothes in closets, my toiletries in the bathroom. But this time, I didn't tuck them discreetly among Logan's things, trying to take up as little space as possible. Instead, I claimed the space fully. My favorite coffee mug went front and center in the cabinet. My novels filled the living room bookshelf that had previously displayed Logan's collection of first editions, which he'd never read. My colorful throw pillows replaced his austere decorative ones on the couch. By midnight, I had transformed the cold, impersonal showcase into something that felt more like a home. My home. I collapsed onto the couch, emotionally and physically exhausted, but with a strange sense of accomplishment. My phone buzzed with a text. From Jordan. You okay over there in the palace? Better than okay, I replied. I'm reclaiming space. The next morning, Logan's lawyer called. Harold Winters was a man I'd met several times at foundation events. A stern-faced Harvard graduate with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual air of mild disappointment. Ms. Mitchell, he began, his voice crisp and formal, I understand there's been some confusion regarding Mr. Whitmore's property. No confusion at all, Mr. Winters, I replied, keeping my voice steady. The apartment is legally in my name, as Mr. Whitmore himself confirmed yesterday. A slight pause. Yes, well, that was intended as a temporary arrangement for tax purposes. If you'll come to my office this afternoon, we can resolve the matter quickly. Say 2 o'clock? His tone made it clear he expected immediate compliance. 6 months ago, I would have rearranged my entire schedule to accommodate a request from Logan's world. Not anymore. I'm afraid I'm busy today, I said. And before I discuss anything related to the apartment, I'll need to consult with my own attorney. Another pause, longer this time. I wasn't aware you had legal representation, Ms. Mitchell. There's a lot you don't know about me, Mr. Winters. I'll have my lawyer contact you when I'm ready to discuss the matter. After hanging up, I immediately called the only lawyer I knew personally, Diane Chen, a former client who had started her own practice focusing on real estate and contract law. We'd bonded over being women trying to build businesses in male-dominated fields. Ava, she greeted, warmly. It's been too long. How are you? I need legal advice, I said. It's complicated and potentially messy. 2 hours later, I was sitting in Diane's office in downtown Crossing, explaining the situation. The apartment transfer, Logan's public humiliation, my decision to temporarily claim what was legally mine. Diane listened attentively, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Well, she said, from what you've described, the apartment is legally yours. If Logan transferred the property to your name, even as a tax strategy, it belongs to you unless you sign it back over to him. His lawyer wants me to do exactly that, I said. Diane smiled slightly. I'm sure he does, but you're under no obligation to rush into anything. In fact, I'd advise against making any decisions until we've had a chance to review all the documentation. So what do I do in the meantime? Stay in the apartment, she said simply. It's yours. Pay the utilities, keep records of everything, and don't sign anything Harold Winters puts in front of you without letting me review it first. I left Diane's office feeling more confident than I had in months. For the first time since meeting Logan, I was taking control of my own fate instead of fitting myself into his world. Back at the apartment, I found a delivery waiting for me. A massive arrangement of white roses, Logan's standard apology gift whenever he'd disappointed me in the past. The card read simply, "Please call me L." I placed the flowers on the kitchen island, a stark reminder of the relationship pattern I was breaking free from. Logan had always believed that grand gestures could erase thoughtless words, that expensive gifts could smooth over fundamental issues of respect. Not this time. Instead of calling him, I opened my laptop and began working on something I'd neglected for too long, my own business. Over the past year, as I devoted more and more time to Logan's foundation, my marketing consultancy had dwindled from a growing venture to a side hustle. Clients had moved on when I became consistently unavailable, choosing Logan's needs over their projects. Now, I reached out to former clients, one by one, with personalized emails acknowledging my absence and expressing my renewed commitment. By evening, 3 had responded positively, eager to work with me. Again. Patricia Whitmore arrived unannounced the following day. The doorman called up, sounding apologetic. Ms. Mitchell, Mrs. Whitmore is here to see you. She's quite insistent. I considered refusing, but confrontation with Logan's mother was inevitable. Better to face it on my terms. Send her up, please. Patricia swept into the apartment like she still owned it, her critical gaze taking in the changes I'd made. Well, she said, not bothering with a greeting, I see you've made yourself comfortable. I live here, I replied simply. Would you like some tea? She ignored the offer. This charade has gone on long enough, don't you think? Logan made a mistake with the property transfer, and you're taking advantage of it. I gestured to the living room. Please, sit down. Patricia, reluctantly perched on the edge of the sofa, looking as if she might catch something from it. Harold tells me you're being difficult about signing the apartment back over. I'm being careful, I corrected her, which is what anyone should be when dealing with legal matters. Let's be frank, Patricia said, her voice sharpening. You and Logan are over. This, she waved her hand to encompass the apartment, was clearly never meant to be yours. You're holding on to it out of spite. I took a seat across from her, meeting her gaze steadily. No, I'm holding on to it because it's legally mine. And because your son publicly humiliated me, then packed up my belongings without so much as a conversation. Patricia's expression didn't soften. Logan has always been impulsive. He says things he doesn't mean when he's had too much to drink. It's a family trait, unfortunately. It wasn't just what he said, I explained. It was the truth behind it. The way he really sees me, as someone taking advantage of his generosity, not as a partner who contributed to his life and work. For a moment, something flickered in Patricia's eyes, a brief flash of understanding, quickly masked. Regardless of what happened between you two, this apartment is worth millions. You can't seriously expect to keep it. I don't expect to keep it forever, I said honestly. But I won't be rushed into decisions that affect my future. Not anymore. Patricia stood abruptly. You know, when Logan first brought you around, I told him you weren't the right fit for our family. Too hungry. I see now I was right. The accusation stung, but I refused to show it. I was never hungry for Logan's money, Mrs. Whitmore. I was hungry for his respect. That's something he couldn't give me, even when it cost him nothing. She moved toward the door, then paused. He's hosting a donor reception next week for the foundation. Your foundation connections are expected to attend. It would look peculiar if you weren't there. I'm no longer involved with the foundation, I said. Or with Logan. Patricia's smile was razor thin. But those donors came in through you, didn't they? People who trusted you? It would be a shame if they withdrew their support because they sensed something amiss. With that parting shot, she left, the door closing quietly behind her. I leaned back, processing the veiled threat. Patricia was implying that if I didn't play along, attend the reception, pretend everything was fine, she would somehow turn my foundation contacts against me. It was manipulative, calculating, and exactly what I should have expected from her. My phone buzzed with a text from Logan. My mother says she stopped by. I hope she wasn't too difficult. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Jordan, who answered on the first ring. So, I said, want to help me redecorate a multi-million-dollar penthouse? Jordan laughed. Is this your villain origin story? Because I am here for it. Not a villain, I corrected. Just someone who's finally standing up for herself. The next day, Jordan helped me move furniture, rearrange artwork, and add personal touches throughout the apartment. We replaced Logan's stark, minimalist aesthetic with warmth and color, throw blankets, plants, framed photos of people I actually cared about. You know, Jordan observed, stepping back to admire our work, this place actually feels like you now. That's the point, I replied. For as long as it's mine, it's going to reflect who I am, not who Logan wanted me to be. My phone had been buzzing consistently all the day, texts and calls from Logan, emails from Harold Winters, even a message from Logan's assistant about the upcoming donor reception. I ignored them all, focusing instead on rebuilding what I had neglected during my time with Logan. My business, my sense of self, my independence. That evening, as Jordan and I sat on the balcony sharing a bottle of wine and watching the sunset paint the Charles Eye River gold, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness, exactly. The wound of Logan's betrayal was still too fresh for that, but a quiet certainty that I was, at last, on the right path. To new beginnings, Jordan said, raising their glass. I clinked mine against it, and to remembering who I was all along. A week passed. My business slowly began to revive, with old clients returning and new prospects responding to my outreach. Diane reviewed the apartment transfer documents and confirmed what I already knew. The penthouse was legally mine, with no conditions or time limits on the ownership. He really should have read what he was signing, she remarked during our follow-up meeting. This wasn't just a paper transfer for tax purposes, it was a complete gift. Transfer with no reversion clause. So what happens now? I asked. That depends on what you want, Diane replied. You could keep the apartment, sell it, or negotiate terms for transferring it back to Logan. The choice is entirely yours. The knowledge was empowering but also daunting. I wasn't sure what I wanted yet, only what I didn't want. To be rushed, pressured, or manipulated into a decision before I was ready. The day of the foundation's donor reception arrived. I had no intention of attending, despite the mounting pressure from Logan, his mother, and even some of the donors I'd personally brought into the foundation's fold. But when my phone rang that morning and I saw Max's name on the screen, I felt compelled to answer. Ava! Max's cheerful voice came through. Are you coming tonight? Please say yes. It's going to be unbearably stuffy without you. I smiled despite myself. Max had always been a bright spot in the foundation work. Brilliant, kind, and refreshingly honest in a world of calculated social maneuvering. I don't think I'd be welcome, I said carefully. Are you kidding? Everyone's asking about you. Besides, these are your people too. You brought half of them into the fold. He was right. Many of the foundation's most committed donors were people I had personally connected with. Small business owners and local philanthropists who shared my belief in community support. I'll think about it, I promised, not committing either way. After hanging up, I stood in front of my closet, contemplating. Attending meant facing Logan, Patricia, and the curious stares of Boston's elite. Not attending meant abandoning connections I'd worked hard to build, people whose causes I genuinely believed in. In the end, I chose a middle path. I would make an appearance, but on my own terms. Not as Logan's ex, or as the woman who was keeping his apartment, but as a professional who had contributed significantly to the foundation's growth. I selected a simple black dress, elegant but understated, paired with the pearl earrings my grandmother had left me. No designer labels, no statement pieces, nothing that could be traced back to Logan's influence. This was me, Ava Mitchell, as I had been before him and as I would be after. The reception was being held at the Gardner Museum, one of my favorite places in Boston. I arrived 30 minutes after the stated start time, when the event would be in full swing and my entrance would be less noticeable. A familiar face greeted me at the door, Eliza, Logan's assistant, looking surprised but pleased to see me. "Ava, I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, giving me a quick hug. "It's good to see you." "It's good to see you too," I replied, genuinely meaning it. Eliza had always been kind to me, even when her boss wasn't. "How's everything going?" She lowered her voice. "Chaotic. The data breach was worse than we initially thought. Some donors are nervous. Logan's been trying to do damage control all week." I nodded sympathetically. Though I'd secured the Foundation's main database, Logan's personal server, with its ill-advised connections to Foundation business, had remained vulnerable. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "If there's anything I can do to help, let me know." Eliza smiled gratefully. "Just your being here helps. The donors trust you." I made my way into the main gallery, where guests mingled among priceless artworks. Immediately, I spotted familiar faces, donors I had cultivated, community leaders I had connected with the Foundation. Many greeted me warmly, asking about my recent absence and expressing delight at seeing me again. I was deep in conversation with the owner of a local organic bakery chain, discussing their plans to offer job training for formerly incarcerated individuals, when I felt a presence at my shoulder. "Ava?" Logan's voice was carefully controlled. "I'm glad you could make it." I turned to face him, maintaining a polite smile. I wouldn't miss supporting the Foundation's work. The bakery owner excused herself, leaving us in an awkward bubble of privacy amid the crowded gallery. Logan looked tired, the strain of the past week evident in the shadows under his eyes and the tightness around his mouth. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy, quickly extinguished by the memory of his casual cruelty at the gala. "We need to talk," he said, quietly. "About the apartment, about everything." "This isn't the time or place," I replied, keeping my voice low but firm. "I'm here for the donors, not for you." His jaw tightened. "You're still angry." "I'm not angry, Logan. I'm done." I took a step back. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I promised Max I'd say hello." I moved away before he could respond, weaving through clusters of elegantly dressed guests toward the far side of the gallery where I'd spotted Max chatting animatedly with a group of tech entrepreneurs. His face lit up when he saw me. "You came!" he exclaimed, pulling me into a quick hug. "Thank God." These people were about to fall asleep while I explained blockchain security. I laughed, feeling some of the tension leave my shoulders. Still terrorizing innocent donors with tech talk, I see. The next hour passed pleasantly as I circulated among guests, reconnecting with people I genuinely liked and valued. I carefully avoided Logan and Patricia, staying on the opposite side of the gallery whenever possible. But Boston's elite social circles are small, and eventually Patricia cornered me near a display of medieval manuscripts. "You've made quite an entrance," she said, her voice honeyed with false warmth. "Everyone's talking about how you're the woman who's keeping my son's apartment." I met her gaze steadily. "I'm sure they're saying much more interesting things than that, Mrs. Whitmore. Like how the Foundation's recent work with homeless youth has been so impactful." "Don't play naive, Ava. It doesn't suit you." She sipped her champagne. "Logan tells me you've refused all reasonable offers to resolve the apartment situation." "I haven't received any offers at all," I corrected her. "Just demands and deadlines." Patricia's perfect eyebrows rose slightly. "What exactly are you holding out for? A bigger settlement, public acknowledgement, what's your price?" The question revealed so much about how the Whitmores saw the world. Every relationship a transaction, every conflict resolvable with the right amount of money or social currency. "Not everything has a price, Mrs. Whitmore," I said quietly. "Sometimes it's about principle." She laughed, a brittle sound that drew glances from nearby guests. "Principle doesn't pay the bills, dear. Or maintain a luxury penthouse." Before I could respond, we were interrupted by the sound of a glass being tapped for attention. Logan had taken position at the front of the gallery, preparing to give his customary address to the donors. As conversations quieted and attention turned toward him, Patricia leaned close to whisper in my ear, "Whatever game you're playing, remember this. The Whitmores have been in Boston for 6 generations. We were here long before you, and we'll be here long after you're forgotten." She moved away to join her son at the front, leaving me with the chill of her words. Logan began his speech, thanking donors for their continued support, especially in light of the recent technical difficulties the Foundation had experienced. He spoke about the impact of their programs, the lives changed, The community strengthened. It was a good speech, one I had helped craft months earlier, before everything fell apart. As applause filled the gallery, I made my decision. It was time to leave, not just the reception, but this chapter of my life. I had come tonight to honor my connections and show support for causes I believed in. I had done that. Now I needed to focus on building my future, one that didn't revolve around the Whitmore orbit. I slipped out quietly, pausing only to say goodbye to Max and a few close donor friends. Outside, the night air was crisp with early autumn, carrying the promise of change. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. My phone buzzed with a text as I waited for my rideshare. It was from Jordan. "How's the Lion's Den?" "I'm leaving," I replied. "And I think I finally know what I want to do about the apartment." The morning after the reception, I woke early and sat on the balcony with my coffee, watching Boston come alive beneath me. From 15 floors up, everything looked ordered and purposeful. Commuters flowing through streets, boats dotting the Charles River, sunlight catching on glass and steel. I had tossed and turned all night, mulling over the decision I'd reached at the museum. By dawn, I was certain. It was time to move forward, not with revenge or bitterness, but with clarity and purpose. My phone rang just after 8. Logan. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "Hello, Logan." "Ava." His voice sounded rough, tired. "Thank you for coming last night. It meant a lot to the donors." "I didn't come for you," I reminded him. "I know." A pause. "Can we talk? In person?" "No. Lawyers, no pressure. Just a conversation." I considered refusing, but closure required communication. "Fine. The coffee shop on Newberry Street, noon today. Public place, 1 hour. I'll be there," he promised. Before I could change my mind, I called Diane and outlined my plan. She listened without interruption, then said, "Are you sure about this, Ava? You're in a position of power right now." "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied. "Draft the paperwork. I'll sign it this afternoon." My next call was to Jordan, who was predictably skeptical. "You're giving up the penthouse? After everything he did?" "Not giving up," I corrected. "Making a choice, my choice, on my terms." At noon precisely, I walked into the coffee shop, a cozy, independent place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Logan was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups, my preferred lavender latte in front of the empty chair. He stood when he saw me, looking uncertain. Gone was the arrogant venture capitalist who had humiliated me at the gala. In his place was someone more vulnerable, more human. "Thank you for meeting me," he said as I sat down. I nodded, taking a sip of the latte. "You wanted to talk. So talk." Logan took a deep breath. "First, I want to apologize. What I said at the gala was unforgivable. I was drunk and showing off, but that's no excuse. I hurt you deliberately, in public. And then I made it worse by packing up your things without even talking to you." "Why did you do it?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for weeks. "What changed between us?" He looked down at his coffee. "I got scared. Things were getting serious between us. People were starting to see us as a unit, not just me with a girlfriend. My mother was pressuring me about the family legacy, about making sure I didn't commit to the wrong person." He shook his head. "Instead of standing up to her, I started pulling away from you, creating distance, looking for flaws." "And did you find them?" I asked quietly. "No," he admitted. "I found someone who made me better than I was. Someone who cared more about the work we were doing than the name attached to it. Someone who saw me, not the Whitmore fortune." He met my eyes, and that terrified me because it meant everything I'd been raised to value, status, wealth, family name, might not be what actually mattered. I sat silently, absorbing his words. They explained his behavior, but they didn't excuse it. "The apartment," he continued. "I never meant for it to be a permanent transfer, but I can't deny it's legally yours now. My lawyers have been clear about that." "I know," I said, "which is why I've made a decision." I pulled a folder from my bag and placed it on the table between us. "This is what I want to do." Logan opened the folder cautiously, scanning the documents inside. His eyes widened as he read. "You're donating the apartment?" "Not the apartment itself," I clarified. "I'm establishing a nonprofit foundation. The penthouse will be sold, and the proceeds will fund the foundation's work, supporting women entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds." I leaned forward. "The Beacon Initiative. No Whitmore name attached." "This is unexpected," Logan said, still processing. "I don't want your apartment, Logan. I never did. What I wanted was partnership. Respect. I took back the folder. This way, something good comes out of what happened between us. He was quiet for a long moment. What do you need from me? Nothing, I said. The paperwork is already being prepared. The apartment will be listed next week. I'll be moved out by then. Where will you go? I smiled slightly. I've found a place in Cambridge. 2 bedrooms, close to the university. Tessa's considering graduate school here, so she'll have a place to stay when she visits. Logan nodded slowly. You've thought of everything. Not everything, I admitted. Just what matters to me now. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of 2 years together and the finality of this moment settling between us. The foundation, Logan finally said. The one you're creating. It's a good idea. Important work. He hesitated. Would you consider accepting a donation? Not from me personally, from the Whitmore Foundation. No strings attached, no name recognition required. I studied his face, looking for ulterior motives. I found none. I'll consider it, I said. But the Beacon Initiative will operate independently, always. I understand, he nodded. And the donor contacts you brought to our foundation? They'll make their own choices, I interrupted. I won't try to pull them away, but I won't hide what happened either. Transparency matters. Logan looked pained, but nodded again. Fair enough. As our hour drew to a close, I stood to leave. Logan rose as well, uncertainty in his eyes. Is this goodbye, then? Boston's a small city, I said. Our paths will cross. But yes, this chapter is ending. He extended his hand formally, then seemed to think better of it and let it drop. I hope you find what you're looking for, Ava. You deserve that. I nodded once, then turned and walked away, feeling lighter with each step. The decision I'd made wasn't about revenge or even justice. It was about transformation, taking something painful and creating purpose from it. Outside, the autumn air carried the scent of possibilities. My phone buzzed with a text from Max. Lunch tomorrow? I have news. As I typed a reply, I realized I was smiling, genuinely smiling, for the first time in weeks. The future stretched before me, uncertain but full of potential. My potential, not defined by anyone else's expectations or limitations. The Beacon Initiative would be my legacy, not something I created to spite Logan, but something I built because I believed in its purpose. The women it would support would never know the full story behind its founding. They wouldn't need to. They would simply benefit from the opportunities it provided, the doors it opened. That evening, as I packed up my belongings once again, this time methodically, thoughtfully, I felt no regret for what I was leaving behind. The luxury, the status, the reflected glory of the Whitmore name, none of it had ever truly been mine. What was mine was what I had always carried within me: resilience, integrity, the capacity to transform pain into purpose. Those were the real treasures I would take forward into my new life. As I sealed the last box, my phone rang. It was Tessa. So, my sister said without preamble, Jordan tells me you're starting your own foundation and moving to Cambridge. When were you planning to share these minor life developments with your only sibling? I laughed, sitting on the edge of the bed. I was going to call you tomorrow. It's been a whirlwind few days. Tell me everything, Tessa demanded. And don't leave out any of the juicy details about how you took down Boston's most eligible bachelor. I didn't take anyone down, I corrected her. I just chose not to stay down myself. 1 year later, the offices of the Beacon Initiative occupied a bright, airy space in Cambridge overlooking the river. What had begun as an idea born from heartbreak had grown into something I was deeply proud of. A foundation that had already provided grants, mentorship, and support to 15 women entrepreneurs from underserved communities. The day was significant. Our first annual celebration, bringing together grant recipients, mentors, and supporters. The conference room had been transformed with flowers, catered food, and a small exhibition showcasing our recipients' businesses. Nervous? Jordan asked, adjusting the display of photographs documenting our first year. A little, I admitted. This is bigger than I imagined it would be when I started, Jordan grinned. That's because you're good at this, Ava. Better than you were at being arm candy for a venture capitalist. I laughed, swatting at them playfully. I was never arm candy. I was undervalued, Jordan finished for me. But not anymore. The guests began arriving. Our first cohort of grant recipients, board members, mentors from the business community, and even a few of the donors I had once connected with the Whitmore Foundation. Some had chosen to support the Beacon Initiative as well, believing in our mission, and my leadership. Max arrived with a bouquet of sunflowers. "For the woman who turned lemons into a lemonade empire," he said, handing them to me with a dramatic bow. "Hardly an empire," I demurred. "Not yet," Max agreed with a wink. "But give it time." He had been one of my earliest supporters, joining the Beacon Initiative's advisory board while maintaining his role at the Whitmore Foundation. "No conflict of interest," he had insisted. "Both organizations do good work. The city's big enough for both." The celebration was in full swing when Tessa arrived, slightly late and slightly breathless, her graduate student budget evident in her thrift store blazer and scuffed boots. "Sorry," she said, hugging me tightly. "Professor office hours ran long." "You're here now," I said, linking my arm through hers. "Come meet everyone." As we circulated through the room, I introduced Tessa to grant recipients and supporters alike. I watched with pride as she engaged with them, asking thoughtful questions about their businesses and sharing her own experiences as a first-generation college graduate now pursuing an advanced degree. "You did this," she whispered to me during a quiet moment. "Look around. You created all of this." I shook my head. "We all created it together. That's the whole point." The afternoon was filled with conversations, connections being made, ideas being shared. I moved through it all with a sense of wonder, that something beautiful had grown from such painful beginnings. As the event wound down, I prepared to give a short closing speech. Standing at the front of the room, looking at the diverse faces of women who had become part of this community, I felt a surge of emotion. "A year ago," I began, "the Beacon Initiative existed only as an idea, a hope that we could create opportunities where barriers had existed, build bridges where there were gaps, and shine light where there had been shadow." I paused, meeting the eyes of our grant recipients. Today, I look around this room and see dreams becoming reality. I see businesses that are not just creating products and services, but building community. I see women who refuse to be defined by what they lacked, and instead define themselves by what they could create. The room was silent, attentive. Someone once suggested that my worth was measured by what I received from others, their generosity, their validation, their approval, I continued. But what I've learned, what we've all demonstrated here, is that our true worth lies in what we give, what we build, and how we lift each other up. I raised my glass. To the Beacon Initiative, to all of you who have made it what it is today, and to the light we will continue to create together. The toast was met with warm applause and raised glasses. As conversations resumed, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Diane, who had helped establish the legal framework for the foundation, and now served on our board. "Impressive speech," she said. "Almost as impressive as what you've built here." "Thank you for helping make it possible," I replied. "None of this would exist without your guidance." She smiled. "Oh, I think you would have found a way. You're remarkably resourceful." As the event concluded and guests began to depart, I found myself standing with Jordan, Tessa, and Max, the people who had been my anchors through the storm of the past year. "Dinner at my place?" I suggested. "Nothing fancy? Just pasta and wine." "Perfect," Tessa agreed. "I'm starving, and graduate student food budgets don't extend to restaurants." An hour later, we were gathered around my kitchen table in my Cambridge apartment. It wasn't a penthouse with panoramic views of Boston. It didn't have marble countertops or designer furniture, but it was filled with warmth, laughter, and the people I truly cared about. The pasta was simple: olive oil, garlic, fresh herbs from my windowsill garden. The plates were mismatched, collected from thrift stores and flea markets. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and the occasional heated debate about movies or politics. As we finished our meal, Tessa raised her wine glass. "To Ava, for teaching me what real strength looks like." "To Ava," the others echoed, glasses clinking. I felt my cheeks warm. "To all of us," I countered, "for creating something meaningful together." After dinner, as Jordan helped me wash dishes and Max and Tessa argued good-naturedly about a TV show, my phone buzzed with an email notification. I dried my hands and checked it discreetly. It was from Logan, the first direct communication we'd had in months, though I occasionally heard updates about him through mutual connections. The Whitmore Foundation had made good on his promise, becoming a silent donor to the Beacon Initiative. Our paths had crossed at city events a few times, our interactions polite but distant. The email was brief. "Ava, I saw the feature on the Beacon Initiative in Boston Magazine. What you've created is remarkable. Not just the foundation itself, but the community around it. You always had that gift. bringing people together, seeing potential where others saw obstacles. I'm writing because I wanted you to know that your work has inspired changes at our foundation as well. We've restructured our grant programs to be more accessible to smaller organizations and first-time applicants. The results have been transformative. You once told me that not everything has a price, that some things are about principle. You were right. The lesson was difficult, but necessary. Wishing you continued success, Logan. I read the message twice, then put my phone away without responding. Perhaps someday I would. For now, it was enough to know that some good had come from our shared history. Not just for me, but for him as well. Later, as my friends prepared to leave, Max paused at the door. You know, a year ago, I wouldn't have believed this is where you'd end up. Not because you couldn't do it, but because you seemed so caught up in Logan's world. I was lost for a while, I admitted, trying to be what someone else wanted instead of who I actually was. Max smiled. Well, I like this version of you much better. The real Ava Mitchell. After everyone had gone, I stood at my living room window, looking out at the quieter Cambridge street below. No panoramic cityscape, no glittering lights of Boston Harbor. Just tree-lined sidewalks, bicyclists returning home, neighbors walking dogs. A year ago, I had stood frozen in humiliation as Logan Whitmore laughed and told a room full of people that I was just a guest in his life, someone living off his generosity. Today, I stood in a home that was truly mine, surrounded by the evidence of a life built on my own terms. The people who dismiss your worth when you're quiet will beg for your help when you rise. But real power isn't revenge, it's knowing you never needed their validation to begin with. I smiled. Not bitter, not triumphant, just free. And that was worth more than any luxury penthouse could ever be.